Welcome to this special rewind episode of Citizens Reunited to Overcome Cancer. We call it the CROC Podcast. Today, we're revisiting Season 4, Episode 173, titled New Shoes. This is inspired by the iconic 1946 Life magazine photo of a young post-war orphan holding a pair of new shoes with overwhelming gratitude. Join Dr. E and Angel and the CROC Nation on a powerful journey, sharing a cancer staff member's act of selflessness that reminds us all to recognize our blessings, even in life's hardest moments. This episode is about compassion, perspective, and the quiet miracles that restore hope. We hope this rewind episode touches your heart, and don't worry, we'll be back next week with an all-new episode featuring a brand new guest. Thank you for listening, and let's rewind as the CROC Podcast starts right now.
Welcome to Citizens Reunited to Overcome Cancer, a show to make your survivorship an easier journey by providing information and advocating for you. A show to help practitioners and their level of performance. This is the CROC Podcast. Here is your host, Dr. E. And alongside him to share some hope and inspiration from the Have Faith, Let It Begin podcast, co-host Angel Santana.
Howdy, CROC Nation. Dr. Tommy and Ellie here with you with another CROC podcast, along with my co-host, Angel Santana. Have Faith, Let It Begin. Angel, how are you, my friend?
The sun is shining every day in the east. It's beautiful weather. Foliage has started, and I feel great for another episode, my friend.
Exactly. Fall in the Hudson Valley. I don't think there's much better than that. There's better changes here than I would even say in Vermont or Maine or anywhere else. So all of you leaf peepers out there, you guys can go to Maine and Vermont or wherever you want, New Hampshire. I'm staying right here in the Hudson Valley.
Absolutely.
Angel, we were just mentioning off air before we started the recording. They hit the record button. We just got done with a board meeting, and I just wanted to thank the board quickly. Boy, I'll tell you, we've had many boards over the 25 years we've been an organization, but this board is really very special, and there were sparks flying and there was ideas. I mean, you could see the smoke rising from the table, and it was not from the Korean fried broccoli. It was from the brains of our amazing and talented board members. So I want to thank you guys for all of your ideas, and we can't wait to implement them. You've already seen some of the changes with the introduction that Angel put together, and I think Angel and Rod will be working on making it easier to navigate the website to get to our podcast, the ones that might interest you. And I'm really excited also for today's podcast, and I think it will make the board members very happy because it's a very short and sweet, and I think you would agree, poignant podcast that was inspired by an event that happened in the clinic or maybe about a week or two ago. And I think that these podcasts that actually have roots in our actual day-to-day work, I think really, connect, because they connect not just with the survivor thrivers, but they also connect with the people who take care of them. I think you would agree.
Absolutely. And for all the people out there that are listening to us here on the CROC Podcast, always remember, that stands for Citizens Reunited to Overcome Cancer. That's what we're here for. That's what Dr. E is about to start with. And we're available every Sunday at 9 a.m. Even if we're not a new episode on a Sunday, we will air older episodes so that you can keep catching up with us. And we're available on every platform. But you know what? We can't do it without you. So please like, share, subscribe, and enjoy today's episode.
Yeah, thank you, Angel, for that reminder. And this podcast is called The Boy with New Shoes. And it was inspired by an actual event that happened, as I said, in the clinic about two weeks ago, when we had a patient come in who was very needy and, really motivated the staff to do the above and beyond like they do every day. But this was particularly, as I used the word before, poignant and very moving. And it reminded me of a picture, and I'll tell you the story. You guys have seen this picture. It's going to be the actual thumbnail to this podcast. The origin of the boy with new shoes came from a photograph taken in Life magazine in 1946. So in post-war Europe, there was a picture of a young orphan, and his name was Werfel. I believe he was about 6 years old, and I think he was in post World War II Europe. And you could see it's a black and white photo, but if you look, you could see that his shoes are worn to the point where there's holes in them, and there's probably no sole, and there's probably he's basically walking in his socks, and most likely in pain and discomfort. And the American Red Cross provided the orphanage with a bunch of new shoes. And the picture shows Werfel with the shoes in his arms. He's hugging the shoes like a parent would hug a child when they were afraid or scared or whatever. And the look on Werfel's face was the embodiment. It was the penultimate, you know, look of joy and of gratitude. And why it was meaningful to me is that I wasn't alive in 1946, but my cousin John, that we've spoken about many times on this podcast, who is my age and kind of grew up as brothers, is a very talented artist. And we used to draw together, and I was a very untalented artist. But John used to do a lot of pictures and, pen and inks. And he actually did this life photograph as a gift for everyone for Christmas, and we all framed we framed it. That's how beautiful it was. He really did it so with such detail and such beauty that actually the photograph that you guys will see in the thumbnail actually was identical to what my cousin's drawing was. But I didn't really understand that he had derived that from that Life magazine photo. So when this happened about this patient that I'll tell you about in a second, that picture of the boy with the new shoes, Werfel, came to my mind. And it didn't just touch me with my personal association with the picture through my cousin John's reproduction of it, but it touched that generation. So people who survived the war and afterwards, but many generations after that, because what it represented, as I said, I used the word embody, it embodied gratitude and it embodied joy. And I have a feeling that this will be our Christmas podcast as well, because the themes are very overlapping. But basically, I read stories or little blurbs by people who have been touched by that picture, where they were basically what it did was it made them aware of the blessings that they had in their own life. It made them aware of all the abundances that they had and maybe the lack of abundances that others had. So this picture, I kind of liken it to my Tigger tattoo on my arm that I got as a result of my little friend Stevie that we did a podcast on, who was a survivor of childhood cancer, but died of all the side effects of treatment. But never was there a day he wasn't, positive and grateful and thankful for everything that ever happened to him. And he was a great example to live life. So sort of like that tattoo, this picture was that tattoo for many, many people. And again, I read the stories of the people that just used that picture as a reminder of how to live one's life and how, how to be grateful for what you have. And that was sparked by the event that I'll now describe. So we're going to call the patient Jimmy. And Jimmy was a very, very is a very wonderful and sweet man. I was asked to do a consult on him, and I went up to the floors and I went to see him. And as soon as you walked in the room, there was this terrible odor, and the odor was coming from his genitals. And he had this huge ulcerating, bleeding, mass of pus and cancer in his groin, and he was suffering. And I spoke to him, and he was just very simple minded. And we spoke, and at first he didn't want to do any treatment, and I talked him into coming down to speak with the staff. And I met with him. We discussed the problem, and he decided and he agreed to have the treatments. But he did it only under the agreement that the medical team would let him go home so he could take care of some of his business, which they were reluctant to do because of how sick he was and this bleeding mass. But they did let him come home. And when he came in for the first day, he came in not in a hospital gown, which we were used to seeing him in, but in his own clothes. And his clothes were disheveled. They were full of holes. They were worn to the bone. And he had, a pair of sneakers that reminded me of Warfel's shoes, with the holes in them and the lack of, bottoms to them or soles to them. And and the staff just basically looked at him and they looked at each other, and as soon as he left to go home that day, they went online and they bought him a pair of Nike low dunks. And they got when his shoes were off, they got the shoe size from the shoes and they got him. And the next day, the new shoes came and he embraced those shoes like the young orphan did. And I just thought that was just such a great, moment for me, and it was a great moment because it wasn't me that had to motivate them to do this. It was completely authentic and genuine and legitimate, and it came from the staff. And really, Angel, what happened last week, you would think that that would be an uncommon act of kindness. It was really not that at all. It was not uncommon, either in our cancer center or in any cancer center. And there's really two sets of reasons, one related to the people who give the gift, so we'll call them the gifters, and one related to the people who receive the gift, and we'll call them the giftees. So the gifters, generally speaking, not all the time, they're healthcare workers that are highly, I use the word, in tune with the pain and suffering of others. As a matter of fact, the ones that go into the healing arts, at least the ones who do it for the right reason, I believe, generally view their work not as a job, but as a calling. And I believe that they have a higher empathy level, again, that ability to feel the pain of others than the average person. And they could feel that suffering and they could actually identify with that suffering. And they also are people that, even though people always say, leave your work at work, I don't like that. I love people who take their work home. I love people that take their work so personally, that they take the losses and the bad outcomes again very seriously, and they take them again using the word personally. They are the people that are committed to the big picture. So these are people that look at not just work or their little worlds and their little baseball teams and their New York Hudson Valley perspective, but they really look at they look at the global environment. They really are they would be protectors of social justice, or they would be advocates for social justice. They are not just thinking locally, they are globally centered. And they're protectors of those who can't protect themselves, like in this case, Jimmy. Now, the giftees, on the other hand, the people that receive the gifts, also have similarities. So, generally speaking, these are the patients, as I said, who can't stand up for themselves and generally can't protect themselves. They are not going to be the average, I use the word Valley Hospital or Lenox Hill Hospital patient, where they're in, upscale communities and people travel, their patients are the stockbrokers and the, hedge fund babies and, all those types of people who go in. And they're, of course, entitled to the best care as well. But these are not the kind of patients that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that are like, that are like Jimmy, that really don't have anything. And they will be the patients that usually lack some form of capacity. So they might be cognitively impaired, so they can't, you know, um, metabolize information. They might have a comprehension gap. And quite frankly, I would think most people do, especially with the complexities of cancer care. They have a very simple view of the world, like in the movie Being There with Peter Sellers. He played the character Chauncey Gardner, who was very simple minded. But yet, as simple as these patients are, they also have a profound sense of wisdom and of right and wrong, which many times an educated person or a person who's successful may not have that same connectivity between right and wrong and between having empathy for others. Whereas some of these patients, we might call them simple-minded, but truly maybe they have the true key to the golden gates of heaven, right? They're also financially disadvantaged. They might even be on a fixed income or be on, governmental assistance or state assistance. And they're usually ethno-culturally disadvantaged as well. So these are the patients of color or patients who might have different sexual identities or people that are, biased against or that are hated. And as a result, there's these healthcare disparities. So these are the connection points between the people that give these gifts and the people that accept these gifts. So when Jimmy came in, Angel, he hit all four of those red flags. That's when the staff intervened. And what made it really awesome is when the doctors or the leaders step up to inspire, that's great. But believe it or not, this is really the minority model. The truth is, and people don't realize this, that the way the hierarchy of medicine is set up, the doctor is actually the most cloistered, the most removed, and the most remote member of the entire healthcare team. Of course, we're the ones that perform the initial assessment. We're the ones that set up the treatment plan. We're the ones that set up, who set the machine, that medical machine of healing into motion. But then we have to move on to go to the next revenue generating task because that's what we do. We have to make the money in order to pay the bills, keep the hospitals running. And I happen to be a private practitioner. I'm one of the dinosaurs left out there, but I see in private practice how those big practices, they have like a quota, like a state trooper has to do 200 tickets a year or whatever. Like these doctors have to see a certain amount of patients per hour, and they have to churn out, all of these, billable codes. And, this is not really us that's moving these incentives to help people. It's really the other staff. So really, to put it into an allegory, we really are not the boots on the ground, the hands on in the foxhole, practitioners. That really falls on the nurses, that falls on the aides, the therapists, and even the clerical staff. So the truth, Angel, is that the actual motivators of these above and beyond acts of kindness and good works are the least visible, the least appreciated, and the least recognized members of the entire cancer care team. And that's what makes sense because there are so many similarities and consistencies and character traits that blur between the acts of healing and the acts of giving, which is what our podcast is about today. In general, both of these acts, the acts of giving and the acts of healing, require selflessness. So you have to put someone else's priority above your own. They both require an expenditure. So it could be a financial expenditure like our staff did last week. It could be an emotional expenditure where you get personally involved with the patient, or it could be a personal expenditure. And I'll talk about that in 1 second. Both require the ability to empathize. Again, we've used the word empathize 3 times already. So you have to be in the position to feel the pain and suffering of another person. And both require that emotional investment, and they both require generosity of self, the generosity of your time, of your money, of your energy, of your expertise, of your talents. And this is what I wanted to get back to. Like anything else in life, our good Lord has gifted us with so many blessings and so many great traits, but there is a limited currency that the Lord gives us, and we have to have this currency is all there is. It's not unlimited. It's very, very finite. And anytime we divert these limited gifts, these limited resources that we have, these, I call them limited assets, to quote unquote, not us, meaning to someone other than us or someone other than our family, our children, our loved ones, and take that and give it to someone else, that takes a lot away from others. And I know that when I come home, we did a podcast on sometimes you and I, Angel, we come home and our spouses and our children, they find a shell of a person, a hollow person, because we've given everything inside of us to our work. And think about this. So when our staff goes above and beyond to do this for others, they're taking away from themselves, and that makes them so special. So in closing, I'd like to dedicate this podcast to all the Jimmies that we come into contact with. And we come in contact with these patients, not like once a year or once every couple of years. We really come across these very needy and special patients on a daily basis. And I'd like to especially dedicate this podcast to all the healthcare workers, not just our cancer care workers who every day are not only great at their job, but great at they're great at their job, but they're even better at their humanity. So it's for cancer. Of course, this is a Survivor Thriver podcast, but it's really for all the healthcare workers out there. And this podcast is for every nurse who has taken money out of their pocketbook or their wallet to pay for a taxi to get a patient home, or in the old days when we were allowed to even drive a patient home. This is a podcast for every therapist who reached into their pocket to buy food or clothing for a patient. This podcast is for every clerical worker who started a team to raise money for a cancer cause. This podcast is for every navigator who shared their personal cell phone with a patient. This podcast is for every palliative care professional who ever performed a home visit. This podcast is for every single cancer care member who I am proud to work shoulder to shoulder with, who has stood up for the rights and needs of a patient without any personal concern for their professional, for any concern for professional repercussions that may result from their advocacy or any personal cost. I salute you. Angel, your thoughts.
After hearing everything that we just described, for some reason, the word kindness just kept popping into my head. So I would think that as we dedicate this to everyone out there that has done this type of work, I remind you of the word kindness. It's all about caring, being genuine for others around you and wanting the best for them and recognizing in them the same wants and needs and aspirations and even fears that you have too. Always remember to be considerate, to show gratitude, to be patient, and don't rush others or jump to negative conclusions when things don't go as planned. Always remember to be respectful and always treat people with respect.
Angel Santana, your words are wise as always. I want to take this moment and I want to again recognize and thank our board members. I used the expression before and it's really true. The sparks are flying. There's some really exciting things happening in our movement to assist cancer survivor thrivers. Our board of directors will make us easier to access, easier to find, and easier to use and utilize for your survivorship needs. And I really want to take a moment and thank them and appreciate them. And of course, at the end of the day, it's all about our Survivor Thriver. It is all about our cancer care team who serves our Survivor Thriver. And today is a really great example of putting both of them in the same room and seeing how wonderful and how moving that interaction can be. And I would like to finally end this podcast as I end each, and that's with our CROC prayer. That's Angel and I and the entire board wishing you all a long, healthy, happy, and cancer-free life. God bless you. God be with you. Peace.
Don't forget, everyone, the CROC podcast will be available every Sunday at 9 a.m. Join us on any type of podcast application. That means you can watch us and listen to us on YouTube. Don't forget, we have availability on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and even Prime Music. That's right. The CROC podcast returns next week. And if you haven't had a chance, go back into the archives. Listen to episode 13. That was season 1. It's kind of a little bit comparison to what we heard today. For all of us here at the CROC Podcast, we'll see you next week.
Hey, CROC Nation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to your friends. Visit our website, crocvip.com. We would love to hear your feedback.